to the extent, that I'm representing a seller and they're doing a seller carry, which is they're providing a loan for part of the purchase of the company, we always make sure that we get a personal guarantee for my client, for the seller, because that way, God forbid anything happens, they have.
Welcome to Clicks and Bricks podcast. We talk about the entrepreneur mindset, everything from that Main Street brick and mortar to that billion-dollar manufacturer. Be sure to head over to clicksandbricksacademy.com so you can access all the resources to start improving your sales today.
Welcome back, everybody, to today's episode in Clicks and Bricks. My name is Ken, and today we have Mike he's the Senior Manager Partner at Texas Business Brokers. Super excited. Today we're going to talk all about managing risk when you're acquiring a company. I cannot wait to get into today's episode. It's going to be a lot of fun. But before we bring Mike on, if you'd like to join my text line community, 314-370-2871. You can just say the words hi, or you can ask me any question you want about business or technology, and I'll give you an absolutely free, no obligation, unbiased opinion on whatever your question is. And never try to sell you anything on that text line. I will just send you tips and tricks, 1 or 2 tips or tricks a month. And every now and then you'll get some NFT or crypto news. How you doing tonight, Mike?
Doing great. How's it going, Ken?
Fantastic. Super excited to have you on today. And I'm really excited that we have a little bit of a different episode today, that we're going to be talking about acquiring businesses and reducing your risk. And that's super exciting for me because I've been down this path. I think I've been involved either on the buying or selling side about 45 times in my life.
Wow.
And it's super exciting. It's way more fun to be on the buying side than the getting bought side. But both sides are a lot of fun for me. So before we jump in, Mike, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what about Texas Business Brokers that makes it special?
Okay, sure. So my experience spans a couple of different industries. I started in the restaurant industry, worked for Taco Bell, and when it was owned by PepsiCo, and then worked for Yum Brands when PepsiCo spun off the restaurants. At various roles, from running a restaurant, running up to 350 restaurants, running training for the company. And then I had an international position running customer service for the world. So that's a whole other episode. And then I decided that I didn't want to be a one-trick pony. So I got into a different industry. I got into the fitness industry. And I started working for 24 Hour Fitness and had a couple of nice events that occurred there, which was a lot of fun. And so did that for about 10 years. And then kind of the final kind of national, or should I say corporate type job that I had was I spent 3 years in a jewelry company, running a jewelry company as CEO. And, for me, it was time to do something on my own. I had some 401k dollars, and there is, if you buy a company, there's ways for you to create a self-directed 401k, and that's probably another episode. But anyway, and take that 401k money and instead of investing it in mutual funds growing 2 to 3% a year, invested in yourself. And so I decided to do that. I bought some restaurants, and the guy who was the broker representing the seller worked for Pizza Hut when I worked for Taco Bell. And he, so we knew all the same people, and we became fast friends. And one day he called me up and he said, I'd like to meet with you and talk about something that has nothing to do with your restaurants. We were about to close on the restaurants. And he invited me to be a business broker. He said, you've got all the experience from your years in business. He goes, I can teach you how to market the company. And unfortunately, Bill ended up passing away 6 months later from mesothelioma. And so he's a, kind of an angel up there that got me involved in an unbelievable business. And, we went from, I had about $1 million probably worth of listings within 3 months, which was crazy. 14 listings. They were smaller back then. And now we're north of $40 million worth of listings and continuing to grow. And typically we have 25% of our listings under contract. And that's how I became a business broker.
Fantastic. So you had your friend, rest in peace, reach out to you. Did you guys found Texas Business Brokers together, or did he already have it? You came on as a partner?
So he had, it's an interesting question. He had another company and it was called Bill Holtzclaw and Associates or something like that. It didn't have a catchy name like Texas Business Brokers. And so I started at that time when he passed away, Retail Growth Associates, because I really felt good about that. It's about growing companies, and that's really what I try to be about. And then I sold my first company, which is a company called Austech Sprinklers. And the guy who I sold it for was a young guy, Alex Kabaz, who ended up becoming my partner. We became friends, and he super smart kid. He's the one that I told you about earlier, sold a $22 million company, which he owned 10% or whatever. So he's done quite well this year. He's going to be paying a lot of taxes. But, when he came aboard, we did Central Texas Business Brokers, and then somehow the name Texas Business Brokers just fell right on our lap. We paid $3,500 for it, which is crazy. And then I bought Kentucky Business Brokers and have a broker out there as well. And, and just everything just kind of grew from there.
Fantastic. So now you've got the company formed, everything's chugging along, you're on a great growth path. So today's episode, normally we talk about adversity and overcoming hurdles and things like that, but I think negotiating on the sale and some of the tactics that a business owner can use to be selling or buying a business, right? So one thing that I noticed, and you're primarily brick and mortar business, is that correct?
No, we do. We've done .com companies.
.coms as well?
E-commerce, absolutely. Yeah, service companies.
So across the board, one thing that I see, especially in the under 10 million business when they're selling, is that the owner is actively running the business. He's an O&O, or owner-operated business. And so frequently at the closing time, they remove that owner's salary from the number for the EBITDA, and they want the EBITDA number to not include the owner's salary. So do you have any advice for a buyer on what to look for? Because I always feel like the current owner is devaluing what they do for the business by removing their salary and making that part of the EBITDA number as part of the value of the company. But most of the time, that owner is still really, if he's an owner operator, he's needed to operate that business. Or if he's not, at least the salary is. So can you give us a little bit of advice if I'm buying a company, how to look for that particular scenario to make sure you're not overpaying for the business?
Yeah, I always say that there's 3 levels of absentee, which is really what we're talking about. The first level is you're really not an absentee owner, and you're saying that you are, that you're there day to day, and that if you left the business, you couldn't go away for a week on vacation. The second level is kind of like me with my restaurants. I'm the CEO. I have managers in each of my restaurants. And, I go out and I visit them once in a while and give them lists of things to do. And then the third level is send me a check. I'm in Barbados. Okay. Right. So I think that the first thing you have to do as a buyer is you have to get a sense of where that's at. Now, the other complication around all of that is that if the company is built on that person, so in other words, if they leave, their customers are going to say, wait, what happened? What happened to Ken? I'll go somewhere else. A good example is I got a call earlier from a martial arts studio. Now it's too small for us, so I couldn't take it anyway. But I asked him if he was the sensei. I think I'm using the right terminology there. Right. Is the business built around him so that when he leaves, all of the kids that he's teaching and all of the adults that he's teaching says, hey, I don't know who this new person is. And it becomes a watershed event where they either look for another or stop. So, understanding, and that's why in a lot of cases there's earnouts, because they're saying, look, I don't know if the business is going to fall apart when you leave. So after a year, if it hasn't fallen apart because of you leaving, then you'll get the rest of your money. But at the end of the day, what you want to make sure of is you want to make sure that you can take on that role. So if the business is truly a owner-operated company, which there's nothing wrong with selling a company as an owner-operated company, as long as the buyer can come in and take that operation over.
Right. I've found great success when it's an absentee owner and the new owner comes in and is an active owner. That's when you can see a lot of real magic with that company really taking a huge turn, right? So if you have an absentee owner, specifically with brick and mortars, right? Specifically, more so, one that I have the most experience with this is in fitness, right? So if you have a fitness store and its owner absent and the new owner is going to come in and be active. I've also seen this with Smoothie Kings, right? So the Smoothie King sells, the owner was just not there at all, but the new owner is going to be active. Everything gets a lot better. The bathrooms are always clean. The products are always pristine, right? When the teenage employee doesn't show up, the owner is there to fill in that role. It's been a really good experience for me an owner that's going to be an operator taking over an absentee owner position. That's I've seen the best upswings in those kind of sales.
Well, that's why you have to ask the question, and we always package the business this way of what is the current owner not doing that he or she should be doing? And then that becomes your kind of list of how you can grow the business, because you never buy a business high. You always want to buy a business with opportunity. And so we're real clear with buyers to say the owner's not been in a while. The gym is dirty. There's not a lot of trainers right now. That is a huge opportunity, so on and so forth. So here's they're not doing any direct mail. Here's all the things that you can do to grow the business. This is what the seller is not doing that they should be.
Right. So at those times, and I've always been a fan of buying businesses over starting them. I'm a huge fan of bootstrapping.
Agree.
And I start way more businesses than I've purchased by far, right? But I like to taste businesses. So I like to start them, see how they taste, see if I like doing that business or not. And if I don't like it, I bail. I go do something else, right? So I don't overly commit to businesses that I don't really, really enjoy doing. But buying a business definitely reduces a ton of risk. Can you tell us your experience on if somebody does buy a business that is owner operated, what kind of deals can you make with the current owner operator to stay on board? Obviously he wants to leave, right? He wouldn't be selling his business if he didn't want to go. But how many times have you seen it where that owner operator stays on board for 3, 6 months, even a year or more to help train the new guy and transition all of those, this is an owner dependent business. How do you transfer that ownership over to the new person?
So there's 3 levels. And the first level is
you got three levels for almost everything. So far.
Yeah, three.
Yeah, it's an easy number. Yep.
Like a lawyer that does 4, 4, 4, 3, 3, 3. There's 3 levels. The first level is transition. Hey, here's how to turn on and off the lights. Here's how to unlock the doors. Let me introduce you to everybody. Let me introduce you to the key clients, blah, blah, blah. That's transition. There's training. Let me show you how to go on the floor and try to sell personal training. I'm using your gym example.
Right.
Let me show you how to clean a gym, which, I spent 10 years in the gym industry, so I know how to do that very, very detailed. That's training, how to sell a membership. And then there's ongoing support, and that support varies, right? So, the reality is what I tell the buyers is you don't want the seller to stay. You want the seller to transition. If there's a huge amount of training that the seller has to do, you better make sure you're getting into something you want to get into. Because if you know nothing and you need all that training, you may get all that training. And like you said earlier, say, I don't like it, but you may not have the option to get out once you've bought the business. Like, Ken, you've got a lot of options. So you may not want that. So that's the main reason why. And then the third reason why you may not want that person there is I always tell people, they want 60 days or 90 days worth of transition. If they know the business, I tell them you're not going to need that much. But you can put it in there, but I can guarantee you after 30 days, you're going to be saying, thank you, got it. Got your phone number. I'll give you a call if you need me. And, a text, be available for text and stuff like that, which is usually part of the deal for a period of time. So I usually recommend to the buyers that you really don't want to have to count on that.
Right. So, but a new owner, especially if you've never owned a business before, it's a super scary experience, right? Like, I'm going to buy this business and then it's going to hand me the keys and then disappear, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So a tactic that I've used multiple times and it's worked out really well, and I don't only use this when I'm buying a company, I also use this when I'm exiting an employee on good terms, like an employee retires, right? I try to set up a very small, very, very small retainer each month that they get regardless if I call them or not. But if I do call them, they can execute a billable rate on an hourly rate, because there are things that could pop up 6 months, a year later that just require a quick phone call, right? Hey, this just happened. I've never seen it before. How did you overcome this? And you don't have to do the research. You think that's a good tactic to do a small retainer? And if it is a retainer, is that a $200 or $1,000 retainer? Do you have a good recommendation there?
Yeah, so there's 1,000 roads. There's 1,000 solutions and 1,000 ways. And if you have a good broker, they'll be creative to figure out 1,000 ways. It really depends. I mean, and it depends also on the seller. The sellers that I work with are sellers that care. I never work with a seller that says, just get rid of this thing. I never want to hear from it or see it again. Sellers that I work with is, hey, I really care. I care about my people. I want to make sure that the buyer is going to be successful. It's got my name on it, whether it has my name in the name of the business of the DBA, or it has my name on it because from pride, or people know me, that it's my business. Those are the kind of sellers that I work with. But if you really need that, I mean, I think that the solution matches what you're solving for. So it's hard to give a blanket. I think that's a good thing. If I have a seller that is not motivated and I found myself in this position, so I need to give them some consideration to make sure that they are available, then maybe that's a good position to have. And it also depends on the buyer capability as to how badly they need it.
Yeah, I think for most people, or at least I like to have it because I don't know what I don't know. And 1 month of operation is one thing, right? Most people can say, hey, I can figure this out for 1 month. But the amount of things that can come up over a year are, every now and then you got a boiler in the basement you didn't know about. It breaks in a specific way. You can spend $5,000 on a HVAC guy to come and fix it. Or maybe the owner knows how to kick it in that one spot to kick it back on, right? So having that relationship with the seller is wildly important. And sometimes you might have to give him a stipend just to keep his interest for that full year. And I like to have the owner available for a year. I don't want him in my business, right? I don't want him there every day giving me recommendations, but I'd like to be able to call him and say, hey, what did you do on your taxes last year? Or, hey, buddy, you really got to pay your sales tax from last year. You've not paid that yet, right? So, which is another huge deal. When you buy a company, asset purchase versus buying the company, right? Which are two wildly different, buying the LLC or doing an asset purchase. How do you recommend your buyers for the most part when they're doing that? I think I know, but I'd like to hear from you.
Yeah, it's asset purchase. I mean, get everything, get the IP, get the whole kit and caboodle, and have a good lawyer. Don't try to go it without a lawyer because you want to make sure that you don't miss anything that the UCC has done, so that there's not, universal commercial code, so that there's not any liens and stuff like that. I mean, do it right. Don't try to be cheap on executing the deal, because you'll end up paying later. But an asset purchase, make sure that you get everything. You want to get all the DBAs. Getting the LLC is risky. And it's risky for everybody involved. So when you take over someone else's LLC, you get the tail. And even if you've been indemnified, which means that you've been protected from anything that happened prior to closing, you still get that tail because anybody can sue anybody. And then the seller gets the forward stuff, because let's say something happens 6 months from now, they're going to sue everybody inside of their, from a litigious standpoint. So an asset transfer kind of cuts that liability, chops it. I'm selling a staffing company where they actually have to make it a stock purchase. And because of their clients and the contracts, the way the contracts are written, that has to happen. And so there's going to be all those indemnifications, but preferably you want to do asset.
Absolutely. And the difference is, if you buy the company, you have, like, if somebody fell last week on the floor in the business and they're suing the company, you just bought that company. Now you're liable for that, right? You're gonna have to fight that in court and all those other things. The insurance is gonna carry over. But if you just buy the assets, you don't actually buy the company, then liability stays with the old company, and it kind of just it falls apart and doesn't really go anywhere. And I've actually had criminal charges pressed against me for a company that I bought that something happened previously, because they said it was fraud. Now it all worked out okay. What obviously was not fraud, but it was still a little scary to have the cops show up and knock on my door and say, hey, this person's saying you fraudulently charged their credit card for $1,000. I'm like, whoa, I didn't even own the business then. But even if you do an asset purchase, sales tax carries. It does not matter. So you want to make sure that your sales tax is covered from the previous owner. And I know sales tax, I've been bitten by that, but are other taxes also carried forward, even in an asset purchase generally?
Yeah, property taxes. I mean, if you have a good attorney, they'll all that stuff will be prorated properly. But there's, property taxes and there's franchise taxes in the state of Texas. So
Right.
there's, depending upon where you're at. But again, don't have a. Now, I did have. I'm saying this, but I broke this rule. I had an Illinois attorney handle my Texas purchase way back when, but he was really a national attorney because he worked for a company that I used to work for. So, but just make sure that and make sure you have a transactional attorney. Some people say, oh, but my friend's, a domestic attorney or what do you call it? Family law. And no, but that's, maybe they do some work with contracts, but they're really not transactional. And they don't understand some of the transactional stuff that comes up. And so you want to make sure you have a good lawyer. And I always recommend people get a lawyer.
Right. And I'm not a lawyer, Mike. Obviously, you're not a lawyer, and we're not giving you legal advice here at all. But these are things to maybe ask a lawyer. If you're having conversations, you're thinking about buying a company, you're having conversations with a lawyer, these are things that you could maybe bring up to them, right? Now, yes. I have some pretty firm beliefs, and I'm sure that in an M&A deal, mergers and acquisitions, the topic of personal guarantees comes up quite a bit. Do you have a stance on personal guarantees, one way or the other? Are they good, bad? How would you recommend your client if somebody wanted to get a personal guarantee from them?
Well, if you're the guarantor, they're good. If you're the guarantee, am I saying that the right way? I always get those backwards. If you're the guarantee,
I think if you're the guarantor, you're in the bad position.
If you're the guarantor, like a leaseor, right? You're the one that's getting the guarantee. And
correct. Yes.
So if you're a guarantee, basically what you're saying is look, if I don't do this, then you can come after my personal assets. And I do have some personal guarantees, like on leases, and I have an SBA loan, and they require it. So there's in some cases there's really no way around it. But to the extent, that I'm representing a seller and they're doing a seller carry, which is they're providing a loan for part of the purchase of the company, we always make sure that we get a personal guarantee for my client, for the seller, because that way, God forbid anything happens, they have some recourse. But you'll always be, if there's a loan, SBA financing, you're going to be second in line. Yeah, so right. Don't expect that you're going to be the first one that goes to the table and tries to get your money. The bank's always going to be first, and there may be some others that'll be first too, but you want to be as first as you can.
So again, I'm not a lawyer by any means, but my recommendation is never sign a personal guarantee unless you have the physical assets for that particular deal to back that personal guarantee. So you can exit those assets and then cover that personal guarantee with whatever you're purchasing, right? So you better be damn confident that whatever you're purchasing and putting your personal guarantee on, you can sell it and get that money back to fulfill it. The other thing that I recommend, and again, this is not financial advice or legal advice at all. If you own a lot of businesses and you're putting yourself in a position where people might sue you a lot, talk to your insurance broker, talk to your lawyer. But I also make sure that all of my assets are backed by second and third mortgages, right? Even if they're low, right? I always make sure that anybody does want to come after me personally, that they're third or fourth in line, right? Mm-hmm. And if you're in a business, you should understand those things of what position all your creditors are in. If you keep the bank and the government in first and second positions, nobody else really has any kind of claim against you, right? They can get the claim, but they'll never collect anything, right? It's uncollectible debt at that point. If they try to sue you and they actually win, if you're thinking about suing anybody, talk to your lawyer. I don't recommend it. Court is a miserable place to be. Yeah, it just makes lawyers rich is the only thing that I've ever experienced in court. So fantastic. So we're talking M&A, not necessarily buying businesses. If you had one tip to give somebody looking to buy a business, what would that be?
Be clear on what you want to do every day. And, chase money, it'll run from you, as my dad used to say. Pigs get slaughtered is another thing my dad used to say. I think it's important to find something that you're really going to be excited about and you're going to make money. And, the brain's like a computer. If you type in your computer, find X file or Y file, it's going to find one or the other. If you type into computer, find X file and Y file, it's going to find both. If you type into this computer, I'm going to find a business that I really enjoy doing. It's going to be my passion and I'm going to make a lot of money. And then that becomes what your computer finds for you. And so I think it's super, super important if you're going to buy a company to make sure you buy something that you're really going to enjoy doing. Because even if you're absentee, things happen. I mean, look what's happened with COVID. There's a lot of people that were very removed from their business that found themselves having to run their business, and they never felt like they would ever be that close from an altitude standpoint to the day-to-day, but there was no choice. So you better pick something you enjoy.
Absolutely. We're running a little bit late on time here. So now switching gears to the other side of the fence, if I'm looking to sell my company, what's the number one tip that I should be thinking about before I even contact a broker? What should I have done?
I think the first thing is, why are you selling? There's a lot of people that sell because they don't know how to take it to the next level, or it's gone into a position where they don't know how to get it back into, kind of equilibrium, or it's failing. And so they say, well, I'm just going to sell it. Well, you can't sell a failing business. You're basically, it's like trying to sell a car when you're underwater. So I think, understanding the motivation of why you're selling is the most important thing.
Fantastic. Yeah. If you've ever tried to sell a failing business, it is hard. You can give them away sometimes if you have a client that's looking for it. I would say the number one thing that you should do before you buy a business is become a client of that business. If you've got a target business, like, hey, I think I would really enjoy buying and operating this business, become a client and become like a super client. Become that client that they absolutely love, the one that's asking questions all the time. And then when you buy it, it'll be like an undercover boss experience, right? It'll be a lot of fun for everybody because you'll already know all the employees, you'll know everybody. It's a good time. It is a lot of fun. I've done that one time, and I absolutely love it. And it's one of my most enjoyable experiences owning that businesses right now. So it is a lot of fun.
I did it when I bought my restaurants, and when I went in on that Saturday for them to announce that I was the owner, the managers were there, and they looked at me and they said, "I know you."
Yes. Yeah, and then it actually lowers the anxiety from the staff. Anytime, I've been through more than 40 of them, and only a couple of them that I keep the entire staff and just only let go of the management. Unfortunately, in IT, which has been most of my merger and acquisition, either I went to the new management team or we fired everybody from the new company that we purchased because It was just a roll-up, right? The roll-ups are scary. They're not as fun as the growth mergers. The roll-up mergers tend to get a little more haircutty, and not my jam per se. I like growth. I don't like cutting. But
it defines economies of scale, so that's why you do it.
Yeah, accountants typically go first, right? Because you don't need two accountant teams. HR goes pretty quick. The guys in the trenches generally stay, right? Because they're the ones doing the work. But the economies of scale at that higher level tend to go pretty quickly, which means one marketing team stays, right? It's one or the other. So they choose the best of the worlds. But it's a scary thing, but it happens every single day. And I think it's going to happen even more and more through the next 10 years, right? Because I think we're going to have more people in the business owner world over the next 10 years than we've had in the last 100, probably, which is super exciting for me. I love business owners. I like people that take that risk and go off on their own. It's a lot of fun, but it is scary. Before we go, Mike, how do you think technology is going to change your industry in the near or far future? If you thought about it at all, what technology is going to really put a staple into your industry and change it in a beneficial or maybe even a negative way?
Yeah, I think that if you think about real estate and where that market's going, and not at the moment, because at the moment you've got very low supply and a lot of demand. A lot of people want to buy houses, but nobody wants to sell because there's no place to move. But it is becoming more technologically oriented, such as being able to see 360 tours of the house, and being able to buy like Carvana. At some point, I think you'll be able to use a vending machine to buy a house. Not that the house is going to kick out, but I think that it's from a technology standpoint, you'll be able to constitute the entire deal without having to have all these people, and you may not even need realtors in the future.
Right. And so Musk is living in a $50,000 house from Elon Musk. Bought a $50,000 house, and he's living right now on his land. He bought it. It's right off the shelf.
Wow. 50,000 or 50 million?
50,000. He bought, it's like boxingahouse.com or some crap. I don't, you know the name, Chris?
I don't.
I forget the name of the company, but he literally bought this micro house delivered for $50,000. It pops up and it's totally livable, like for 50 grand.
Yeah, I think, when it comes to, packaging a business, you're packaging it two different ways. You're packaging it based on the bricks and mortar or the website or whatever that case may be. And then you're also packaging it as it relates to the financials. When you talk about packaging a house, it's really for more intents and purposes, you're packaging the house and maybe the neighborhood, so it's a little bit different. But I think that will be circumvented. I think that there's going to ultimately be a way where you'll be able to buy a business online and, substantial business. And then there'll be, depending upon the levels of difficulty of that business, there'll be services, if you want to call it that, as it relates to how much is necessary. And you may be some human intervention at a certain point. But if you're selling $100,000 or $200,000 or even a $500,000 business, you may never need, I don't see anybody in Starbucks anymore. I don't talk to anybody in Starbucks anymore. I order my coffee, I go grab it, I leave. So that where, business brokering is going to go, just to an extent, probably.
Absolutely. Yep. I think a lot of online, and we've got some sites like Flippa, but you can't really buy a business. You can buy business ideas there, concepts, and like seed businesses, but not like, I don't see a whole lot of established businesses that I could buy and turn them around and really make a pretty significant income. So thank you for your time today, Mike. I very much appreciate it. Different kind of episode. I like that we dug into the different strategies of, buying a business or selling a business. Before we go, do you have anything you'd like to leave the audience with?
Feel free to call me at any time. I'm at texasbusinessbrokers.com, phone number 214-592-3637. Email Mike F at texasbusinessbrokers.com. That's F like Florida or like Feindman. And, we're 24/7. We're always available. We'll always provide advice, even if it doesn't make sense for us to sell your business. We're there. You're stuck with us once you call us. So we really believe in what we call a win-win-win. We want the seller to win. We want the buyer to win. We'll win third. And that's how we built the whole business of Texas Business Brokers.
Fantastic. Thank you for your time again today, Mike. I really enjoy having you on. I hope we get to talk to you again sometime soon.
Thanks.
That's it for today's show, folks. Again, if you have a company that you're wanting to sell, give Mike a call. He can help you out. If you'd like to join my text line community, it's 314-370-2871. I'll never try to sell you anything. Just send you business tips, tricks, and every now and then some crypto NFT news. That's it for today. Get to work.